I changed the semantics of advocating for yourself to it's a process. Hiring has a process. You get a resume together, you get an interview. The process isn't over until you do the negotiation. I don't care if they offer you 5 times what you think the job was worth. And notice I'm not saying what you're worth. It's the job's value. It's a market, just like a house. If you go and buy a 3-bedroom house with 1 bath in Chelsea, it's going to be very different than if you buy it in Dover. There's a market. Understand the market, and I'll show you how to do that research. But it is a process, first and foremost. The decision for how much money you will make is based on the process. According to salary.com, they've done some research, 86% of hiring managers expect negotiation. What that means is 86% of hiring managers at a minimum are leaving money to the side on the first offer. Because if they expect negotiation, they can't give you everything because they're not going to be that loser to go to Marcy and say, I offered her the $50,000 we budgeted, but she wants more, now what? And Marcy will say, you're going to make $50,000 work. So they just, okay, I'm budgeted to $50,000. I'll offer her $45,000 and see where we go from there. And if you end up at $45,000, that manager has $5,000 extra to play with. And if you move it up closer to the $50,000, they're fine. It's a win-win for them. So that's why I have this first one. It's 3 numbers. As a candidate, you need 3 numbers. You need to go and for a promotion too, or a raise. You need 3 numbers. What's my minimum? What am I going to not accept a penny less? My search continues if it's anything below X. And that should be based on research, not on I have a mortgage, I have this, I have that. Because you could be the best coupon cutter in the world. And that has nothing to do with the value of the job. So don't shortchange yourself. We women typically say 30% lower than men for what we want to get for a job. We're really bad at estimating the value of the job. But you know what we're really good at? Negotiating. We are amazing negotiators. And we're really good at the type called collaborative. So it's not where it's kind of zero-sum game, but it's really talking with each other, asking questions, and finding the sweet spot. And here is what the sweet spots are. You're finding, so okay, so you have your bare minimum. Then you have your goal, once again, based on research, and we'll go through that in a second. And then you have your counter, or your initial offer. It has to be higher than what your goal is, or you'll never get your goal. That's just kind of the basics of negotiating. It will make you want to throw up or choke the first time you say the number because you'll think it's so obscene, because the goal is going to be obscene to you the first time you really do the math and the research, because you've been settling. If you're a woman, you're making about 20–25% less than the guys. So we've been settling. We need to get a little ticked. But at the same time, the managers have a budget. So they know maybe it's $50,000 is the top of their budget. And bigger companies will have an actual band that they're supposed to be between like $38,000 and $50,000. Smaller companies, it's like, let's see if we can get them in at this, but you can't go a penny above $50,000. But then they also have, you know what? That person's only making $30,000. We're going to offer them $36,000 because that's 20% increase, which is really, they should only be getting a 10% increase from their last job. That's the norm, 10 to 20% more. Very rarely do you see above that. And really, 20 is being obnoxiously high. Really, 10 to 15 tends to be the typical increase when you switch jobs or when you get a raise. And that has nothing to do with the market. If you're already underpaid 20, 25%, that 10% gets you still underpaid for your last job. So it's the market of the job. Remember that. So as long as you get, both parties win. This is collaborative negotiating. You both can win as long as you land above your goal and below their budget. No one walks out of the room mad. Everyone's happy. And remember, the managers expect you to do this negotiation. You're actually kind of disappointing them when you don't, because now they're wondering, how good is she or isn't she at her job if she doesn't know enough to negotiate? They really are thinking that. So now you know that. So the gender gap. I already mentioned lawyers have the biggest one. It is, on this data, right now they're saying it is 22 cents. And this is brand new data just this year. For the country, for women in every kind of job working full time. I use this data, which is based on weekly instead of annual, because it also includes every kind of industry going on. And as Mark Twain said, there's lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics. So this kind of shows, if you go weekly, it's 81 cents. If you go annually, it's a little different. But you can see it's across the board, every kind of industry. It's just all over the place. Whether you're a man or a woman, you need to be aware of this because it's going to impact your research. So say you go and do research on salary.com. There are other websites, PayScale, Glassdoor. Every single job site in the world has some kind of salary calculator nowadays. If they don't, move on to another one. They're not keeping up with the times. Any number you find on those, if they're including men and women. So if you were a lawyer, male, making $125,000 a year, and then a woman lawyer making $75,000 a year, all these sites would give you the median as 100. But we want to make what the guy's making. We don't want to make the median of all of us together. So you want to adjust up. I actually have a mobile app, Earn More Girl, that will do the math for you, but basically just go up. Just keep going to the right, you know. So here, what salary.com puts as a marketing assistant is $41,000. It's actually $47,000 that the guys are making, and that's based on the gender pay gap for marketing and the makeup of men and women in that career, in marketing. So it varies for each industry, but if you went just to the 75%, if you were aiming for the median, which none of you should because you're better than the median, you always want to move up. Does that make sense? Because that one's a little tricky sometimes. Okay. Oh, we're already at this one. Let's see how we're doing on time. And I have a few more times, so we're going to move back. Forget about that for a second. So let's talk about the different parts of your career. When should you negotiate? I talked about how they expect you to negotiate. When do they expect it? When you get a new job. When you get a promotion. Oh, we'll give you a nice new title, but we're not going to give you pay. What? I'll stay doing the job I'm doing now for the same pay. I don't need to do more stuff and not get paid for it. When they do job creep, which is classic. Everyone gets job creep nowadays. So your job description and what you actually do have very little in common after about a year or two. You have all these extra things. It's like, oh, would you mind doing this for me, Lisa? Would you mind doing that for me, Catherine? And you look, and I'm doing 20 things that have nothing to do with initially what my job is, which is great, but you should be getting paid for that. Do the research based on what your new job description kind of looks like. And that conversation you can start by going and saying, hey, I'd like to talk about my responsibilities. Can we prioritize these? And then when the priorities look like everything but what your job actually was, say, okay, so what I'm actually doing now is a director of, and I was hired as a manager of. Let's talk about the director pay, because you've done your research before by going to like salary.com or PayScale or any of those. When you first get a new job, you're opening salvo after they give you this great offer that's much more than you ever expected it to be, which is still lower than it probably should be. You're just going to say, wow, that seems a little low. And on the handout, you have all this language. But it's not giving actual numbers right away. You want to open the discussion and get their perspective and give your perspective and show that you've done research. Another great way to do research, a headhunter. Especially if you're staying in the same type of job, because they love putting a round peg in a round hole. They'll do that all day long. You call up and say, hey, I'm a marketing manager in Boston making X. Can I do better? Oh my gosh, we have 5 openings right now. Send over your resume, let's talk. You instantly found out that you're underpaid and you've just created new options.